shit. That's what I'm talking about.
Wait! Okay, now, from the beginning.
Hi, my name is Adam Goods and welcome to the Goods Oil. Today on our show, I'm joined by Susan Sly, former Chief Information Officer at VicRoads and now founder and director of consulting firm Lure. Sue, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Adam, and good to speak to you.
Yeah, and hopefully I've got my French accent going properly there. So is it Lure or is that how you pronounce it?
It is Lure, which I selected cleverly as a consultant that no one can spell, remember or pronounce. But it meant glow, which was what I wanted. My daughter, who lived in France for 12 months, tells me if you translate it in the reverse direction, it means sparkle, which is not quite the image I'm after. But
that was great. No, fantastic. Okay, so Sue, you established Lure in 2014 as an independent consulting or consultancy that brings a balance of supplier and customer experience and insight to organisations where harnessing technology is the cornerstone of its work. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about what you do and why you started the company?
Absolutely. It's most commonly summed up by my clients as being very different, but fundamentally I do hostage negotiation and I interfere for a living. When I go in and work with a company, I'm really there to challenge how they think about their business, in particular how they think about technology in that business, and having a look at whether it's actually driving them forward or acting as a bit of a millstone around their neck. I'm very big on pragmatic strategy, pragmatic approaches, having worked in the shoes of a CEO and CIO as well. So when I go and I work with them on developing their way ahead, but then just niggling from the sideline, a bit of a benevolent dictator, and helping them go to an implementation that when I walk out, they keep going.
Yeah, great. And so you've had an outstanding career thus far, Sue, and with roles in defence, government and in private corporates. Where did your career start and can you take us through these roles?
Very mixed background, which I think is actually one of the things that in hindsight stands me in good stead now. Yep. So I spent initially 8 years in the military. I did a maths and physics degree with them. Yep. I then worked in a university in New South Wales in a public relations role and setting up Australia's first aviation degree. Yep. Recruited into oil and gas, working offshore overseas in a geophysics type role initially, and then it was that company that brought me back to Australia and to Melbourne, working in employee benefits and remuneration. Yeah. That part of my career I actually think was pivotal. If there's one thing I think senior managers or people aspiring to leadership or management roles should do at some point is work in HR and employee relations for a couple of months or so if they can. Yeah. I then went into technology. I've spent the last nearly 20 years in technology, initially running IT operations for a region of defence down in Victoria. I then moved to Canberra with them, IT operations moving into enterprise architecture. Then when I came back to Melbourne, a series of roles, business intelligence, large program management, and then moving into CIO roles. And the CIO role at VicRoads was the most prominent of those. And that really brought together a whole lot of experience that I'd had before. Going into Lure was after I'd made a call to leave the Australian Energy Market Operator and went into consultancy. A lot of people had said to me I should. I had resisted it on the basis that I like to be in charge, and the people side of technology leadership is really important to me. And I had a perception that I would lose both of them if I moved into consultancy and advisory roles. What I'm delighted to have discovered is it's actually been the opposite.
All right, we're back on. Sorry about that, everyone. We're just a little technical difficulty. So, Sue, you were talking about an opportunity to go into consulting and how having your experience in the HR world has helped you sort of understand a little bit more about consultancy, etc.
I'd probably I think more as a manager. I think as a manager, that HR experience is really strong. Interestingly, the reason I probably hesitate on saying that it helps me as a consultant is being really blunt. As a woman running an IT consultancy, one of the things I encountered very early on, because the leadership piece, technology leadership, and the capability piece is very important, what I would often get is, oh, you do HR stuff then. And it was really interesting because it actually wasn't HR that I was doing. It was technology leadership. It was in operational design. It was organisational redesign. It was actually delivering and designing service models and things like that. And one of the good things about the consultancy has been being able to give that objective advice into companies. So you're able to be, very pragmatic. It has to be sustainable, so that as an advisor or consultant, when I leave a company, that company and their technology and their business teams have to be able to keep going. And they have to be able to not just maintain what you've given them, but continue to evolve it and have the understanding of strategy and skills that they need to do that. And that's probably one of the more rewarding things around what I'm doing now, is when you actually hear back from companies in 12, 18 months' time and you're still in contact with them and you're seeing the paths that they're still going down. It's sensational.
Yeah, fantastic. And I know another area that you're passionate about, Susan, and that's around education and specifically for IT professionals. What are your views on where we're heading with higher education, vocational education, and sort of IT industry certification? Are we on the right track?
I think we've got a range of challenges. I think one of them is I think, the lines are very much blurring between tertiary, vocational education, etc. And that's largely funding driven rather than driven by a pedagogy around how you teach the programs. I think also that the incredible rate of change, pace of change in the technology industry means that people immediately focus on shorter-term training, shorter-term courses, on qualifications and certifications, and there is a risk that will come at the expense of us having people in the industry who also have either tertiary degrees in management philosophies or in the more engineering elements around what sits behind the industry. And I think that's something that we've really got to get to terms with, is there's no one-size-fits-all model.
And so you're a great advocate of diversity, especially amongst the IT industry, and we see a lot of this in the media and content online, which is great. And I think there's still some people out there that don't really know what it means or have clarity about what it is. And because it's not just about gender. Can you explain to our listeners what diversity means to you and why we need more of it?
I think in some ways it's almost as if people think about what diversity isn't. And if you walk in a room and people are look the same, they act the same, they're all agreeing with each other, and there's really, what you'll get is no sort of sense of a dynamic vibe. Diversity is, I think, it's just good for business. Plus, quite frankly, being about fair. Everyone has a right to work. And I think for me, diversity is about really making sure that you have, if you like, a representation of our community in your company. So in the technology industry, I think it's particularly important. We are meant to deliver intuitive-based services to the whole community, whether that be Indigenous communities in remote Australia, whether it be into organisations that have or service groups with disabilities, etc., whether it's women, kids, older people, whatever it is. And we have to have representation of those communities within our companies if we're going to be effective. And I say that really pointed because it's not just about being successful and efficient, it's about being really effective and sustainable as well. And I think, that's, if you look at it from the flip side, that right to work, one of the things I find really frustrating is an implicit assumption that because people aren't what we're used to, that they can't do the job as well. And where I think we suffer in particular with that, potentially with technology, is not necessarily within the industry, but within our client bases. Is we have an expectation of what our industry or someone successful in our industry should look like. And unfortunately, that often means that people employ what they think they want rather than necessarily who they need. And I think that's something as an industry we actually have to really own and say, what is it here that we should be promoting about ourselves, and what should we be saying to people? Look, these are the sorts of people, the combinations of people you should have in our room. And the other thing around that, I think the other issue about not having diversity is that you fail to develop the people that are already there. Yeah. And I think that's one of the things people, I think you hear our industry was historically dominated by people predominantly with engineering backgrounds. The nature of education at that point was they were predominantly male, etc. What we haven't done often in those people is also invest in them around things such as, in some cases, around leadership, and particularly leadership of diverse multidisciplinary teams. So you see people that get sort of branded as being effectively part of a historical model, when really we should be investing them and keeping them current and expanding their skills along with everybody else. We have a staff shortage. We have a talent shortage in Australia.
Yep, absolutely.
We need everybody to be part of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic, and totally agree. Which sort of leads me into my next question, Susan, around, if you were 21 today and entering the IT workforce for the first time, what would your view of our industry be?
Good question. It's both depressing and delightful how long ago that was. And I think my view of our industry today would be that it's a hell of a lot more exciting, and it's much more attainable to be a part of it than it was historically. I think now, again, we have such a spectrum of the capabilities we need in our industry. We need everyone from designers to data scientists to engineers, process people, all of them. Yeah. And I think nowadays, it would just be a much more exciting place where people have got an ability to bring themselves to the industry, not wedge themselves into it.
So are we promoting ourselves the right way? Are we sending the right messages as to why IT is a great career choice?
No, I don't think at all, actually. I think we've got a real issue with, we still tend to promote based on technical skill, when a lot of our industry is based on, in fact, working with service providers who have the technology behind the wall, so we need them. But we need a great diversity of skills and talents across our industry. We should be promoting that. So really telling people we want designers in, we want engineers in. So, my passion in life is rugby union. The thing I love about it is every kid has a valuable place on that team, regardless of a physical or intellectual level. Yeah. And I think our IT industry should be promoting themselves in the same way. We are the best place to go, and where you can actually change the world, change the way companies and organisations operate, whether you be an engineer, a data scientist, a designer, a graphics designer, a process person. We need them all, and we should be promoting and making all of them welcome.
Yeah, absolutely. No, fair call. So, Susan, we've got a segment called Goodsies Fast 4, where I ask 4 questions in 30 seconds. You ready to go?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. Number 1, what's your go-to order at your favourite restaurant?
Oh, I live in Melbourne. Everywhere is my favourite restaurant. I'd probably have to say mushrooms and polenta at Herbsburg Empire.
Oh, sounds nice. And what do you wish you had known when you had started out in your role at the moment?
That running a single woman consultancy would have a whole lot of different challenges to having been an executive in the IT industry.
Okay. And what's something you failed at?
If you ask my daughter, parenthood. And she still loves me though, and I can't ride a bike.
Okay, well, there you go. And what are you curious about right now?
Oh, lots of stuff. I think probably really mostly, in fact, how but this is getting serious. Our political system. I think our political system is actually out of kilter with where our community values and expectations have gone, not the politicians necessarily themselves. But I'm really curious to see how globally and in Australia our political system is going to evolve over the next probably 10 to 15 years.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a really hot topic. That's probably another podcast ready there waiting to happen, I'd say. Well, thank you very much. And that's all for today's episode of The Goods Oil. Thank you, Susan, for joining me today.
Thank you. It was great to speak to you.
Yeah, and join us again next week when we bring another CIO to the Goods Oil podcast and find out how they are making a difference to this world we live in. See you then.
Hit it! That's what I'm talking about.
Wait! Okay, now, from the beginning.